Hey everyone, it's Kelly from Silly Moon Quilting Co. Today we're going to go over all of the different overall design rulers we have so that you have all of the information in one video. We currently have 7. There's 6 showing here, but OG and Oh Golly are similar, so I'm only showing 1. But this is a quick overview of the overall design rulers we have, and I hope that you enjoy. The first overall design ruler we made was Twisty. And you can see it here. It's a lovely meandering path which creates some beautiful texture and is great for when you have busy fabrics where you just really need to get that quilt done and you just want a simple path that goes over the entire quilt. The advantage, of course, to Twisty is that you mark your first line with a pencil or a marking pen of your choice. And then from there on, we've got line markings that are on the ruler itself to help you keep that spacing exactly the same on all of your quilts. That means as you go along with your design, you don't need to worry about marking your entire quilt. You only need to mark the one line and create with perfectly spaced texture. You can see here I'm using a lighter thread on a lighter fabric. So you come up with a texture, but you don't see a huge amount of the stitching. So you could easily do this with a 12 weight or a darker thread to create even more impact of the overall design on your quilt. But it does just create a super fast way to create some beautiful overall texture. And once you wash this all up and it crinkles up, it looks really amazing. Now we're moving on to Picket Fence. So another one of our overall design rulers. And Picket Fence, like Twisty, is symmetrical about the center. So we can just flip that and the top and the bottom will be exactly the same as we go along. So no matter which place we start or where we finish, it is exactly the same as we go along with Picket Fence. We can then use the line markings that are on Picket Fence to determine how far apart we want our rows. And you can change this. You can do different spacing depending on what you want to put in between those rows, or if you want them nice and tight together, or you can even make them so they're overlapping. Totally up to you what spacing you want to use, but go ahead and use the line markings that are on the ruler to create that spacing, as we can see here, and that means that then we're not having to pull out another ruler or pre-mark our quilt, which is awesome. So again, as long as you remember which spacing lines you use, if you want your spacing to be all consistent. But often when you're doing an overall design, sometimes it's fun to create different spacing. So by moving the space between the little picket fence lines a little bit different, it can create some fun overall designs as well and adds a little bit of texture as we go along. You can see here what it looks like, and these are 2 different spacing options that we've got with Picket Fence here. Our next overall design that I'm showing is Oh Golly. We have 2 rulers that are similar, Oh Gosh and Oh Golly. Oh Golly is a little bit smaller, so if you're working on a domestic machine and you're fairly new to rulers, it's a good one to start with to get the feel of curves while still having a really cool design at the end. If you notice on the side of Golly, and the same is on OG, is that there's a spacer that we've built in there, and that is so that we can then start again our second row in the center line, and that's going to give us the Arabesque OG type design. It's the same as on OG, and you'll end up creating the same design. Now when you go to do your second row, you can either do exactly the same thing and carry on the design, or you can do one row that is the opposite. So where the circles meet, we want to create a bit of a spacer row, if we will, and that's going to mean that we can then carry on and rotate the design. And again, you'll notice that through all of this, I have the very first line marked on my quilt, and this is the same for all of the overall design rulers. I have my first line marked. Everything else, I'm only using the line markings that are on the ruler to carry on and create the design. So we end up again with that lovely overall texture or overall design as we go along. And as a reminder, whatever thread you use can make a huge impact on what these look like. Again, this is Oh Golly, and OG is very similar. I didn't show it here because it's basically the same. It's just a little bit bigger if you want to get that quilt done just a little bit faster. So you can see here I've created some lovely designs with the Oh Golly ruler. I just think it's fun and makes a great overall design. Then we're going to move on to Zippy, and Zippy's a little different because it's not a symmetrical design. So when we finish the one, when we flip it, it's creating the little diamond shape at the top. So you can do it so that it's all the same all the way across. You would just slide the ruler along rather than flipping it. And then we can use, again, whatever spacing we want. So there's several line markings on the ruler itself, and that's going to help you determine what your spacing is going to be. And you can choose your spacing to be whatever you want. You can keep all of those little points going the same direction if you choose, rather than having some up and some down. And you would simply do that by not turning the ruler, but sliding your ruler foot through the ruler all the way to the other end and repeating the same design. So for example, when I reach the end here, instead of turning it at this point, I would just slide my ruler foot across and start over again, and that would put all of the peaks in the same direction. But you notice here I did a whole bunch of two different rows with two different spacing, and that just adds some texture, and you can choose whether you like that or you want it all the same. The next overall design ruler we're going to use is Skyline. And it is a little different again because it's not symmetrical. To create that skyline, or to create more texture, we purposely made it so that the little peaks, I guess, at the top and bottom of the ruler are different. So it does create quite a different overall design. It's a lovely geometric design. And on the side of Skyline and on the bottom of Skyline, you've got two different spacing options. And you can choose which one works best for you. And you can also make them closer together if you want to overlap them. I do want to mention that it's also important to remember that we're not turning our quilt every time we do this. So we're going from one design to the next just by moving the ruler along and using those line up marks on the ruler to create a lovely overall design. This is Aztec, our newest overall design ruler, and I thought it might be fun to be a little bit closer in so you can really get a good feel for how that needle and ruler foot slide through the slot on the ruler. So we're going to do our first design. As always, we've got one line marked, and Aztec is like Zippy where you're flipping it. If you want them all to be along the same direction, so you don't want a top and a bottom like this one, you can absolutely slide your foot along the inside of the slot, or lift your ruler foot and slide it through the needle portion, and that will allow you to create all of the little squares or rectangles in one direction. So you can see there how I slid it through. That's so that I can take it off and do the next row, and I'm going to do the same thing again so that I can rotate my ruler and start repeating the row exactly the same way that I did the first one. So it is important, because these little wings are fairly thin. We do want to make sure, especially if you're using on the 1/8, you want to try and hold those down, and that's going to help keep your stitches nice and secure and keep them nice and even. We're again using the line markings on the ruler for lining up our next row, so we don't have to continually mark the entire quilt. And then we're going to create all 3 rows doing exactly the same thing. And this is how you're going to continue along if you're working on an overall design. You're using the lines on the ruler and the spacers on the ruler to make sure that you're consistent with your spacing. Or if you choose to make them the rows different spaces apart, you can do that as well by using the different line markings on the ruler itself. You can go ahead and mark your quilt as well, but by using the line markings and the spacer on the ruler, it's just going to make things a little bit easier for you, and you'll be able to get that quilt done faster. Here's a quick look at that overall design Aztec created. So here's a quick recap of some of the designs that we created using the overall design rulers. If you're interested in these, I will put a link down below to all of the rulers. As well as if you have any questions, please comment below and I'd be happy to answer them. The word of the week is going to be overall, so please use that in a sentence down below in the comment section, and one lucky winner will win a $20 gift certificate from our website. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear if you have any questions or thoughts on the overall design rulers on our site. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day.